So, you decided to do it up instead of live it up. Okay, really bad joke, I know, but it's truly exciting. You've landed on the Swiss Army knife of vans, and as we call it, the Do model. And now you're trying to decide if you're going to go with a long chassis or an EL chassis. And you're asking yourself, what are the differences? The long chassis Do model is a lot like a studio apartment where your bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, and living space are a little bit overlapping each other. More of a minimalistic mindset. Whereas your EL chassis is a lot like a one-bedroom apartment where your bathroom, bedroom, kitchen, living space are a little bit more compartmentalized for you. And so today, the goal of this video is to talk through those differences as well as give you a visual for those differences and maybe ask a couple questions to help you decide which van is right for you. And with that being said, let's get into it. If I haven't already, let me introduce myself. My name is Josh. I am a guru here at Vandoit, and today I would like to begin by talking about the key differences between the long and extended length chassis, or as I'll be referencing them, the L and EL. The key difference between these two version vans is going to be your sleeping layout, or space thereof with the sleeping layout. You want everyone to wake up as a happy camper, ready for the day's activities, right? Luckily, the design team had this very goal in mind when they designed the platforms. And an important note with the platforms is they're going to be your biggest space takers in the van. So looking how these platforms occupy space in an L versus an EL chassis is going to be very important. So let's begin by doing that. One of the most popular oversights I typically hear of is the clients who are wanting to sleep multiple people in a Do model. For those wanting to sleep multiple people, it's often forgotten that you have to seat multiple people as well as need luggage space for multiple people. Combine this with the desire to have a living space with a kitchen pod, plus seating, plus multiple bedding. It is a big challenge to accommodate in a long chassis. And this is one way we accommodate that with the long chassis. As you can see, we have got multiple seats in the third row to accommodate for 4 passengers total, while having sleeping space for 3. Now, if this setup were in a high roof, you could also have space for an additional person on the floor. So essentially you'd have single, single, double. Now, the biggest thing to keep in mind with these platforms is they do not have a fold leaf as seen with the Live model. And the reason this is important is that for those who are wanting to have seating space, plus sleeping space, plus space for a kitchen pod, plus room for luggage, you'll need to keep this in mind as the lower bunks can start to overlap into that third row seating. And so if you were going to put seats in your second row, you wouldn't have room for a kitchen pod. For more setups and more details on different setups within a long chassis, please see our long chassis specific video. Now we are in an EL Do model. The design team really had one goal in mind when they designed this: space. Lots and lots of space. As you can see, right in the living room space, as I call it, you have room for your kitchen pod, other modules, as well as third row seating, all while there's plenty of room for multiple full beds behind you. This is the biggest difference. Your living space is very similar to that of the Live model, where it's compartmentalized with minimal rearranging in mind. So now that we've discussed some of the key differences of the extended length Do model, let's start by discussing some of the recommended layouts. The recommended layouts for the extended length will be seating and sleeping 1 to 2 people, seating and sleeping 3 to 5 people, and seating and sleeping 6 to 8. So let's begin. So the first layout we'll be discussing is for seating and sleeping 1 to 2. Now, the significance and the importance of seating and sleeping 1 to 2 is that there are no rear seats required, which means you just have an enormous amount of space in an extended length. Basically, this works well for those who are wanting a mobile office, wanting extra room for multiple kitchen modules, as well as just an open hangout space. So let's get into them. The first layout we have for seating and sleeping 1 to 2 is what you see here. As mentioned, we have got no seats up front, which leaves a lot of space. In the back here, we have currently got a single bunk setup, And so the first layout is really just gonna have a lower bunk layout. Now this can be a single like it is, or it can be a double as you've seen in other videos in pictures. Either way, this lends itself well for the solo or couple travelers who are going to be using the van, but not with a lot of big equipment and gear such as bikes and whatnot. Since the bed is set lower, you won't be able to store bikes or other types of bigger gear underneath. So this really lends itself well for like a weekend warrior where you're wanting more of a comfortable layout and you want to just kind of fall into bed as opposed to climb up in bed. The second layout we have for seating and sleeping 1 to 2 people is what you see here. We have got 2 single bunks stacked on top of one another, and just like the long chassis do model video, these single bunks lend themselves well for those that are going to be bringing a buddy like myself, or for those that have got a snoring partner or maybe a partner that moves a lot in bed. This also lends itself well for those that are wanting to be able to walk front to back alongside their beds and maybe easily access the storage tower and other storage compartments. Third and final layout for seating and sleeping 1 to 2 is exactly what you see here. Again, no seats up front, and in the back we have got your double bunk set up now. Now this could also be broken down into a single bunk if you're a solo traveler, but it will accommodate 2 as well. Now again, this really lends itself well, just like it does for the long chassis, for those that are hauling toys and as well as extra gear. So fitting bikes underneath the bed, dirt bikes underneath the bed, paddle boards under the bed, you name it, this is perfect for that type of setup. So the second layout we'll be discussing today is seating and sleeping 3 to 5. Now the significance of this layout is that we go from needing no seats in the back to needing 1 row of seats in the back. Now those seats can either be in the first or second row. So this basically gives us 2 layouts to talk about. So let's begin. So the first layout for seating and sleeping 3 to 5 is what we have here. So I have got your 2-person bench here in the 3rd row, as well as a jump seat here in the 3rd row. So this is your seating. Behind me, we have got your triple bunks. So we have got 2 full bunks as well as your single bunk to sleep up to 5 inside the van. Now, if you're wanting to tear down and accommodate 3 to 4 and you don't quite need 5, you can take seats out or platforms out as needed. Since they do not overlap in an extended length, they do not affect each other as you do that. Now, what's really significant about this layout and what really makes it lends itself well for 3 to 5 is the fact that these seats are in the 3rd row. Where the cameras are currently sitting is a large amount of open space that can be used either for luggage and gear or for something such as a kitchen pod. What's also great about this layout is that we have got these seats in the 3rd row. So when using these in conjunction with the front passenger swivel seat, it really creates a living room effect where a group or family can hang out, face one another, really providing an awesome opportunity to talk, maybe during a rainy day or evening. So the second layout for seating and sleeping 3 to 5 is going to have your seating in the 2nd row. This layout really lends itself well, maybe for those families and parents who would like their kids to be a little closer, more accessible, maybe within arm's reach. Now, with this layout, it's important to note, you can still do a kitchen pod behind the seats, as well as just have a little bit of extra room for maybe some more luggage space. The only caveat to this layout is it does not lend itself well for more of a living room hangout space, such as the first layout discussed. Now, keep in mind that the 2nd row seating that we are in here right now can either be a 2-person bench or a 3-person bench. Right now, it is a 2-person bench. So for bedding, again, we have 2 full bunks stacked on top of each other, as well as a single bunk down low. These beds can be folded down into singles, doubles, and accommodate 3 to 5 as needed. So the last layout we're going to discuss today is seating and sleeping 6 to 8. Now, the uniqueness of this layout with having this many adventures is that both rows of seats are going to be required. The reason this is important is because you will not have room for a kitchen pod or extra open living space. So there's only one layout for this many, so let's show you. The recommended layout for seating and sleeping 6 to 8 is what you see here. Now, as I mentioned, you're going to require both rows of seats. So we have got our 3-person bench here, jump seat here, and 2-person bench right here. Now, behind me, you're gonna see that we have got 2 double stacked bunks, as well as a mattress on the ground. Now, the important feature of sleeping this many people is that it will require a queen-size roof nest up top as well. Unfortunately, there is not a way to stack 4 bunks, even with a high roof. Now that we've talked about the interior features of an EL, let's talk a little bit about the exterior. One of the biggest added benefits of the EL is the dually wheels in the rear. These work to add extra stabilization as you drive to offer a smoother ride when compared to a high roof long chassis. The last factor I would tell you to consider is maneuverability. Surprisingly, the maneuverability of an EL is not that much different than that of an L. Both models have a 148-inch wheelbase, which means the distance from the front wheel to the back wheel is going to be about the same. What's different is the body that sits on top. So the long chassis comes in at 19.5 feet bumper to bumper, while the EL chassis comes in around 22 feet bumper to bumper. And at 22 feet bumper to bumper, you can still typically fit in most parking spaces, although parking downtown as well as parallel parking is definitely more of a challenge. One pro tip I have before I leave you, if you are looking to experience the maneuverability yourself, one thing you might try is getting your hands on an SUV or truck, getting a luggage rack or bike rack if possible on the back and driving the unit around. This should give you a pretty close idea of what it's like to drive an EL in terms of parking and maneuverability. So that's all I have for you today here on the EL. To recap a little bit for you, if you're going to be hauling and sleeping multiple people, the EL may be something for you to consider. Second, if you're someone who prioritizes a smoother ride and wants the benefit of those dually wheels, then the EL is definitely something for you to consider. Lastly, if you are someone who prioritizes ease of use and doesn't want to deal with the stress of having to rearrange for different scenarios, then the EL may be a big benefit to you and something for you to consider. So that's all I got for you today. Other than that, if you're looking for a more specific dive in of the long chassis do model, make sure to visit that video specifically. Other than that, we'll see you guys on the next video.